I am delighted. I have heard so much about you.
Yeah, but you can't prove it.
Who'd want me after what I've done?
Listen, when women go wrong, men go right after them.
Haven't you ever met a man that can make you happy?
Sure. Lots of times.
Mae West, known for her bold personality and sharp wit, was one of the most daring stars of Hollywood's golden age. Audiences loved her, but her provocative style also painted a target on her back in an era defined by strict societal morals and censorship. One particular film scene caused such a stir that it led to widespread outrage, and Mae West found herself banned in parts of the United States. What was it about this scene that shook America so deeply? Mae West's rise to fame wasn't just due to her charm, but her willingness to challenge societal norms. In an era when women in Hollywood were often confined to submissive or overly sanitized roles, West stood out as an outspoken and independent figure. She wasn't only an actress, but also a playwright and screenwriter, crafting scripts that reflected her fearless personality. Her work often dealt with taboo subjects, such as sexual freedom and gender roles, topics that were rarely explored so directly on screen at the time. According to the New York Times archives, her Broadway play, Sex, in 1926, caused such an uproar that she was arrested and charged with corrupting the morals of youth. Mae, however, saw her arrest as free publicity, famously quipping to reporters that she was willing to step behind bars to advance the art of entertainment. This quote, verified in historical accounts, demonstrated her sharp wit and ability to turn controversy to her advantage. Of course, her unapologetic approach didn't sit well with everyone. Authorities, moral groups, and even other industry professionals saw her as a threat to the moral image of Hollywood. Tensions between Mae West and Hollywood censors began long before the infamous scene that got her banned, setting the stage for an inevitable clash between her creativity and the rigid production code standards enforced during the 1930s. By the time she transitioned to Hollywood films, it wasn't a question of if Mae West would provoke controversy, but when. The controversy reached its peak with the release of She Done Him Wrong in 1933, which featured Mae West at her most daring. The film, based on her own play, Diamond Lil, was filled with suggestive dialogue that pushed the boundaries of what was acceptable under the production code at the time. While much of Mae's humor relied on double entendres, which were deliberately ambiguous, one scene in particular drew widespread criticism.
I want to thank you for those beautiful flowers. They were lovely. And don't forget, come up and see me sometime.
In this pivotal scene, West's character, Lady Lou, sits flirtatiously with Cary Grant's character, teasing him with her famous line. Contrary to popular misconception, the actual line, as recorded in the shooting script and heard in the film, uses sometime instead of the often misquoted "see me sometime." This line became iconic, not for its explicitness, but for the way West delivered it with her signature mix of seduction and wit. Despite its tame nature by today's standards, many critics at the time described the scene as dangerously suggestive. The National Legion of Decency, a Catholic organization influential in enforcing Hollywood censorship, singled out the film as a prime example of moral decay in American cinema. Mae's playful yet confident portrayal of female sexuality, embodied in this single exchange, challenged traditional depictions of women as passive or demure. Interestingly, the backlash wasn't limited to the dialogue itself. Critics commented on her wardrobe and body language, which they argued were designed to distract and provoke, according to reviews from outlets like Variety. For audiences of the time, this mixture of boldness and subtle menace proved magnetic. But for some moral guardians, it crossed a line that could not be ignored. The fact that West so effortlessly confronted and disregarded societal taboos amplified their outrage. This scene cemented Mae West's reputation as a provocateur, but also marked her as a prime target for censorship. It wasn't just about one line or one performance. It was about the broader impact of her unapologetic portrayal of a woman who lived by her own rules. The backlash from She Done Him Wrong and Mae West's provocative persona didn't stop at public criticism. The controversy forced Hollywood studios to take a closer look at their own practices as pressure grew from religious and civic organizations like the National Legion of Decency. These groups accused Hollywood of corrupting public morals, and Mae West, with her sharp wit and overt sexual confidence, became a central figure in their crusade. One of the most immediate consequences of the outrage surrounding West's films was the stricter enforcement of the production code, also known as the Hays Code. Introduced in 1930 but rarely enforced during its early years, the code imposed strict guidelines on depictions of violence, profanity, and, most notably, sexuality in movies. After the uproar over West's daring performances, Hollywood began to rigorously apply the code in 1934, directly impacting her creative freedom. West later reflected on the impact of Hollywood's reaction, stating in a 1935 interview with Photoplay that they'll let a girl show practically anything as long as she isn't having any fun. This comment underscored her frustration with the double standards of the moral gatekeepers. Displays of violence or suffering were acceptable, but a confident and empowered woman enjoying herself was seen as a threat. The heightened enforcement of censorship also limited Mae West's ability to create the kind of bold material that had defined her career. Scripts that might have been accepted earlier were now heavily scrutinized, with censors often cutting significant portions of her dialogue. For West, this meant a constant negotiation to retain her signature style without violating the now vigilant production code. Perhaps most significantly, the uproar signaled a broader cultural shift. Mae West became a symbol of the tension between creativity and conservatism, forcing Hollywood to walk a precarious line between satisfying public demand for entertainment and adhering to moral expectations. The fallout wasn't just about Mae West's films, it was a turning point in the battle over artistic freedom that would define Hollywood for years to come. Despite her efforts to adapt to Hollywood's new, stricter rules, Mae West's films continued to face bans in several parts of the United States. State and local censorship boards wielded significant power during this period, and West's provocative image made her work an easy target. Cities like Boston, known for their conservative views, outright banned screenings of her films, declaring them detrimental to public morality. This localized censorship limited her film's reach and, in turn, her influence at the box office. Her status as a polarizing figure led to coordinated efforts to suppress her career. According to historian Lisa Stead in Off to the Pictures, Women Writing the Hollywood Studio System, Mae West became an example of what Hollywood was trying to distance itself from, an image of excess, independence, and defiance of traditional values. The industry was eager to prove its compliance with the stricter guidelines, often at the expense of stars like West. The bans and censorship didn't just affect her professional life. Mae West became a cultural battleground, dividing public opinion. Those who supported her saw her as a voice for women's empowerment, while her detractors labeled her as a symbol of moral decline. In a 1935 interview with the Los Angeles Times, she addressed this split, saying, "I was a sensation, not for exactly the right reasons in some eyes, but enough to make them notice. The rest is on them." This quote demonstrated her awareness of her controversial status and her refusal to take full responsibility for the public's reaction to her performances. The longer-term impact of the bans and the backlash extended far beyond Mae West herself. They reinforced Hollywood's reliance on self-censorship to avoid confrontation with vocal moral groups, but they also revealed cracks in the system. The very discussions about morality, gender roles, and creative freedom that surrounded West laid the foundation for future challenges to the production code, challenges that would ultimately lead to its decline by the late 1960s. For Mae West, the bans marked a shift in her career trajectory. While she continued to perform in films and on stage, her influence waned as the boundaries she had tested were more rigidly enforced. However, her persistence and refusal to compromise entirely on her identity ensured that her legacy lasted long after the bans were lifted.